59, 60, 61. We're not hiring.
We're not hiring, say now.
Didn't ask yet, ma'am.
You were going to.
I'll work for the roof and what's in the pot. A week. You don't feed me the 8th day, that's the whole of it.
There's a bunk in the barn. Stove's got no wood split. That's your first hour.
Yes, ma'am.
Supper's at dark. Wash first.
He counted the fence posts as he walked, the way another man might pray. 61 from the road to the gate, and every one of them leaning the same tired direction, as if the whole ranch had spent a year sighing toward the mountains. The dusk smelled of iron. That was the snow coming, though it hadn't fallen yet. His hands were stained dark in the creases, ink that 8 years of scrubbing had never quite lifted, and he kept them shoved in his coat so no one would ask. A single lamp burned in the window of the low house ahead. A woman's shape crossed it once, and did not cross back. Amos Reed stopped at the porch step with his knuckles half raised to the door. Saving her wasn't what he'd come for. He didn't yet know it was what he'd stay for. The door opened before he knocked. She stood with a rifle held down along her leg, not pointed, just present, the way a sensible woman holds a thing she hopes not to use. Behind her, a boy peered out at hip height, all eyes. "We're not hiring," she said. "Didn't ask yet, ma'am." "You were going to." Amos let that sit. The wind came off the flat and worried at his hat brim. "I'll work for the roof and what's in the pot. A week. You don't like the work. You don't feed me the 8th day. That's the whole of it." Margaret Doyle looked at him a long moment. She saw the road on him, the boots worn to the shape of somebody else's stirrups, the coat too good to have been bought and too old to have been bought new. She saw a man who'd learned to make himself small in doorways. What she did not see was pity in him, and that was the thing that finally moved her hand off the door. "There's a bunk in the barn," she said. "Stove's got no wood split for it. That's your first hour." "Yes, ma'am." She almost shut the door. Then, because the boy was still staring and it shamed her to seem hard in front of him, she added, "Supper's at dark. Wash first." The barn door hung wrong on its hinge, dragging a quarter-moon scar in the dirt every time it swung. He noticed it, the way he noticed everything, cataloging, filing. 3 cows and a milk goat, a saddle horse gone gray at the muzzle. Hay stacked short, too short for the winter the sky was promising. And in the corner, where a working ranch should have kept its dog, nothing. Just a chewed rope end tied to a post and no animal on it. He split the wood. He split more than the stove wanted, because his shoulders were glad of the work after so many miles, and because a full box was a thing a person could look at and feel less afraid. When he carried an armload to the house, the boy met him at the door. "You a cowboy?" Danny asked. "No. What are you, then?" Amos considered the question honestly, the way he tried to answer children, who deserved it more than most. "A fellow passing through who's good at a few things." "What things?" "Splitting wood, apparently." He set the load down by the stove. From across the kitchen, Margaret watched him do it without being told where, stacking bark side down so the wet wouldn't rot the floor, and something in her mouth tightened that wasn't quite disapproval. There were 3 chairs at the table and 4 places worn into the floorboards beneath them, one gone smooth where no chair now sat. Amos saw it and said nothing. He had a talent for seeing the shape of a grief without stepping in it. They ate. The boy talked enough for the table. Margaret said little, and what she said was about work, the note coming due, though she didn't call it that in front of the child, calling it instead, the thing in the spring. Amos ate slow and listened. He'd spent a life listening to the words people put over the top of their money troubles, and he could read the ledger of a household by its supper table. This one was running out. Not this week, but running out. "You count," Margaret said suddenly. He looked up. "The posts. I watched you from the window. Your lips moved. You counted the fence." Amos set down his fork. "Habit." A strange one, I've been told. And then, because she'd cornered him and he'd rather give up a small true thing than let her dig for a bigger one, he said, "When I was young, I had a job where the counting mattered. Getting a number wrong cost people things they couldn't spare. It stayed in the hands." He turned one over, showed her the ink she'd already noticed, and pretended not to. Some habits outlive the reason. She didn't ask what the job was. He was grateful, and she saw that too. That night, the first snow came, fine and mean, hissing against the barn wall. He lay in the borrowed bunk under his own coat and listened to it, and thought about the empty rope in the corner, and the empty chair in the house, and how a place could be full of absences, and how a man with nothing but absences of his own might fit in the gaps for a while without either of them having to say so. The morning showed him the ranch honest. Frost had feathered every window pane. The cattle, more than the barn had let him guess, 40-odd head running the low pasture, stood humped against the wind, and Amos knew before Margaret said it that they were in the wrong place. He'd grown up nearer to cattle than to banks, before the banks had him. "They'll drift to the coulees," he said, at the fence, his breath white. "Get down in the cuts to break the wind, and if it storms hard, they'll stand there and freeze on their feet rather than climb out. You want them up on the bench where the wind scours it clear, where they can move." Margaret looked at him sharp. "My husband ran them in the coulees every winter. Then your husband got lucky with his winters. He heard how it landed and gentled it. I'm not saying he was wrong, ma'am. I'm saying the sky this morning is a different animal than the ones that let him be right." She wanted to argue. He watched her want to, and he watched her weigh her pride against the 40 head that were the difference between spring and ruin, and he liked her for how hard the weighing was. "Show me," she said. "Not do it. Show me." He filed that away too, and it warmed him more than the work did. They moved the cattle to the bench through a rising wind, the three of them and the gray horse. Danny wrapped to the eyes and set to holding gaps in the fence line. Amos never rode ahead of her. He rode where she could see him and called what he saw and let her give the orders. Even when the order came a half beat after he'd have given it himself. Twice she was right, in a way he wouldn't have been, knowing the ground. He told her so. She didn't answer, but she sat the saddle straighter after. The storm broke that night in earnest. 3 days of it, the world gone white and roaring. On the second day a heifer went missing, calved early and hidden. Danny found the tracks half filled at the wood's edge, and came running for his mother. And it was Margaret who went out into it, rope and lantern, and Amos who went at her shoulder, without being asked, and without going first. They found the cow down in a drift, and the calf already born and near gone. A small, steaming thing, in a world that wanted it dead. It was Margaret who got it breathing. Amos held the lantern, and broke the wind with his body, and handed her what she reached for before she named it, the way a good clerk anticipates the ledger. They carried the calf back between them and set it by the kitchen stove, and it lay there dripping and trembling and alive, and Danny sat on the floor with his bare feet tucked under him, and his hand on its wet flank. And for one moment, the kitchen was so full of the fact of the living thing that the empty chair was just a chair. Margaret looked across the calf at the stranger in her kitchen, his coat black with melt, his ink-stained hands cupped around a tin cup she'd pressed on him. "You'd have run them to the bench," she said. "You knew before I did. You knew. You just hadn't said it yet." That's a generous lie. It's the only kind I tell. And that was the first time she smiled at him, quick and gone. But he caught it, and he kept it. He stayed past the 8th day. Nobody spoke of the 8th day again. The snow settled into the long white silence of a Montana winter, and the ranch found a rhythm with a third pair of hands in it. Amos rehung the barn door so it swung square and silent, and the quarter-moon scar in the dirt slowly filled with snow and was forgotten. He mended what needed mending and asked before he mended it. He learned the boys' questions and answered every one, and if he didn't know a thing he said so, which Danny found more remarkable than any answer. He did not touch the thing that was killing them. He knew what it was by now. A note held on the ranch, past due, and a man in town named Callum Wren who held it. He'd read enough in the set of Margaret's jaw when the mail came, in the letters she folded away before Danny could see them, in the coffee she'd started cutting with chicory to stretch it. He knew the shape of the trouble, and he knew that if he walked into town and fixed it with the thing in his head, the way he could have, he'd hand her back her ranch as a gift, and a gift like that would sit in her, the way charity always sat in the proud, like a splinter you can't reach. He'd done that once, long ago, in the life the ink came from. He'd solved a thing for someone behind their back, thinking kindness, and taken from them the only victory that would have let them believe in themselves again. He'd learned. It had cost him to learn it, but he'd learned. So he waited, and he watched, and he found small ways to be useful with the truth of himself, without announcing it. One evening she found him at the kitchen table with her account book open, and every line of it read. She went cold in the doorway. "That's mine." "It is," he said, and he closed it, and he slid it across the table to her side. He did not defend himself. He waited. "You had no right." "No," he agreed. "I didn't. And you can put me back in the barn or on the road for it, and you'd be within your rights." He folded his ink-stained hands on the table. "But before you do, Wren's got a number wrong. In his filing. Not yours. His." She stood very still. "I don't know everything about the man's paper," Amos said carefully. "But I know numbers the way you know that sky. It's the only thing I know that well. And I've been sitting in your barn 3 weeks, knowing it, and saying nothing, because it's your fight, and it isn't mine to win." He pushed the book that last inch toward her. "It's yours. I couldn't watch you carry it in the dark when I had a lamp in my pocket. That's all this was. Look for yourself. If I'm right, you decide what to do with it. Every step. I'll not take one you don't send me on." Margaret sat down slowly across from him. The empty chair was to her left. She opened the book. "Show me," she said. He showed her. Not doing it. Showing her. He laid it out plain. The beef she was owed on contracts her husband had signed and she'd honored. The hay she'd sold to the freight company. All of it real income the note had never accounted for, because Wren had filed the ranch as failing when the paper said it was breathing. Amos put it where the banker would have to see it, and no more than that. The reading of it, the deciding of it, the standing up in front of the town with it, that he left entirely to her. But she did not take his word for it, and he loved her the more for that. 2 days later, with the roads gone to slush, she hitched the gray herself and drove to town alone, and sat the morning in the freight office and the assessor's back room, pulling the copies of her own contracts with her own hands, matching figure to figure, until she'd found the transposed number herself, and knew it was true, not because a stranger had told her, but because she'd stood at the counter and proved it. She came home in the dark with her jaw set and snow on her shoulders, and she did not thank him. She only said, "You were right, and now I know it the way you know it." That was worth more to her than the ranch, nearly, and Amos understood it and said nothing, which was the right thing to say. "He'll say a woman can't run it," she told him that night. "He'll say a lot of things. The paper won't. And if the paper isn't enough?" Amos was quiet a moment. "Outside a wolf, or the wind pretending to be one. Then you'll have stood on your own 2 feet in front of the whole town and made them look at what you built. That's not nothing, Margaret. That's the opposite of nothing." It was the first time he'd used her name without the ma'am, and they both noticed, and neither of them touched it. The auction was set for a Saturday, on the courthouse steps in the raw new town, and word had gone round the way word does when a widow's about to be sold out from under her son. People came. Some came sorry. Some came the way people come to see a thing fall, and it was a hard thing to witness. Callum Wren stood in a good coat with the papers in a leather case, and beside him the town's older banker, Halloran, gray and grim, there to make it legal. Margaret came in her one good dress with her back straight and Danny's hand in hers, and Amos came behind her with a folder under his arm, and he handed it to her at the bottom of the steps, and then he stepped back. He stepped back. That was the whole of what he'd come to do, and it was the hardest thing he did all winter, to put the folder in her hands and take his own hands out of it and let her climb the steps alone. She climbed them alone. "Mr. Wren," she said, and her voice carried further than she'd expected, so that she steadied it. "You filed this ranch as a failing concern. It's behind on its note, Mrs. Doyle. That's the definition of the word." "Is it?" She opened the folder. Her hands did not shake, or if they did, she'd squared her shoulders so hard it didn't show, the way she'd never once let this town see her cry. Not at the funeral, not after. These are signed contracts for beef, to the army post at Fort Keogh. This is a hay agreement with the freight line. Paid on delivery, delivered. This is a full season of income that your filing does not show, because your filing has a number transposed. Here. She held it up. She'd found it herself, standing at a counter with the snow on her shoulders. You wrote my acreage as my income, and my income as my acreage. A clerk's error, Mr. Wren. It happens to careful men. But it means the court is about to auction a ranch that earns more standing than it would ever fetch seized. A murmur ran the crowd like wind through wheat. Halloran took the papers from her hand. The old banker read them the way old bankers read, slow, top to bottom, missing nothing. And Amos, standing back in the crowd with his hat low, watched the man's face and knew the number was found before Halloran said a word. The figures are sound, Halloran said finally, and his voice had gone strange. The error is Wren's. Then we'll refile. Wren started. We won't be selling this ranch today. Halloran was not looking at Wren. He handed the folder back to Margaret, and it was the gentlest thing anyone had seen his hands do. Your account's in good order, Mrs. Doyle. Better than most in this county. See me Monday, and we'll set the note right on terms a working ranch can meet. Good day. And that was all. No gun had cleared a holster. No voice had risen past the carry of the wind. A woman had stood on a courthouse step with the truth of her own work in her hands and made a town look at it, and the town had looked and been ashamed and been better for it. Wren snapped his case shut and went to his horse. And if he was a villain, he was only the small kind, a man who'd rather be right than kind. And the day had cured him of nothing but this one wrong. It was enough. Danny was pulling at his mother's skirt. Did we win? Ma, did we win? We won, she said, and her voice broke on it at last, now that it was over, now that it was safe, and she put her hand over her mouth and turned so the town wouldn't see, and it was Amos she turned toward without deciding to. He didn't reach for her. He stood close enough to be a wall against the wind and no closer, and he said, "Lo, just for her. You did that. Every word of it was yours. You found the number. You found the number. I only knew where a body might look. You drove to town in the slush and proved it with your own 2 hands. There's all the difference in the world in it." Then, dry, the second time all winter he let the humor show. "Besides, I'm told I've got no right to your account book." And she laughed, wet and startled, into her glove, and the winter cracked a little further open. They drove home in the wagon through a thaw that had started that very afternoon. The snow gone gray and dropping off the pine boughs in soft collapses. Danny slept between them, and Margaret said, watching the horse's ears, "You could have gone to Wren in December, fixed it and never told me. You knew the number in December, didn't you?" "I did." "Why didn't you?" The wagon creaked. A crow said something to another crow. Amos took his time, because it was the truest question anyone had asked him in 8 years, and it deserved better than a quick answer. "I did a thing like that once," he said. "In the life the ink's from. I was a bank clerk, Margaret, a good one. A man came to me drowning, and I fixed his paper behind his back, thinking I was being kind, saved his house, and it broke something in him anyway, because I'd shown him he couldn't save it himself, and a man who's been shown that, sometimes he never stands up again." He watched the road. There was more to how it all came apart, and a time of trouble that put me on the road, and none of it's yours to carry tonight. But that's the part I learned, that the fixing isn't the gift, the standing up is the gift, and you don't get to hand somebody their own standing up. You can only hold the lamp. He glanced at her. So I held the lamp. That's all I ever meant to do here. She was quiet the rest of the way home, but somewhere on that road her hand had come to rest on the wagon seat between them. And near the gate, 61 fence posts, straighter now, he'd set half of them right through the winter without a word. His hand came down over the top of hers, and she didn't move it away. That was all. In that country, in that year, between 2 people that guarded, it was everything. A hand covered on a wagon seat, and the horse walking them home. The last of the winter went out of the ground slow. Green came up in the coulées first, then the benches. The calf they'd saved grew leggy and bold and followed Danny like a dog, and Amos found the boy a real dog besides, a rangy black and white pup off a neighbor's litter, and Danny named it Drift, because Amos said the word so often about cattle, and the chewed rope end in the barn had something on it again at last. One evening on the porch, with the light going long and gold and the mountains gone the color of a bruise healing, Amos sat with a knife and a piece of green pine and whittled while Danny watched. The wood was wet and pale and gave off a sharp, clean smell when the blade bit, and the shavings came away in long curls that Danny gathered up and kept for no reason a boy could name. The knife handle was warm from Amos's grip. The blade caught the grain now and then, and he'd turn the wood and come at it from the other side, patient, and Danny asked what it was going to be, and Amos said he didn't know yet, which was true, and they sat with that a while. "My pa had a watch," Danny said, out of nowhere, the way children lay down the heaviest things like they're light. "It broke. Ma keeps it in the drawer." Amos didn't stop whittling. "That's so. It don't tick anymore. Ma says it's fine, but she's got a face when she says it. Some things you keep even when they don't tick, partner. Keeping's the point of them." Danny thought about that. Then he said, "You got anything you keep?" And Amos, after a moment, reached into his coat and took out a watch of his own, old, plain, the case scratched to silver, and let the boy hold it. It was heavy and cold and silent. "Mine stopped too," Amos said. "Long time now. You gonna fix it?" "Been meaning to try. Never had a reason to be anywhere long enough." He watched the boy turn the dead watch over in his small hands. "Tell you what, you hold it for me a while. Alone. A man leaves a thing like that with somebody, it means he means to come back for it. Keeps him honest." Danny closed both hands around it like it was a bird. "I'll keep it good." "I know you will." That was in April. Margaret watched the whole of it from the doorway with a dishcloth in her hands and didn't say anything, but that night she moved something in the house, and in the morning Amos saw what it was. The empty chair. The fourth chair. The one worn into its own smooth place on the floor these 2 years. She hadn't taken it away. She'd have never taken it away. But she'd moved it, turned it to the wall in the corner, and pulled a different chair to the fourth place at the table, a plain one, a working one, so that the table was full again, and the grief still had its place in the room, but not at the meal. She'd made room without erasing anyone. It was the bravest small thing Amos ever saw a person do. He didn't remark on it. He sat down in the plain chair at supper like he'd always sat there. But under the table, his boot found the leg of it, and he pressed it, once. The way you'd steady a thing you meant to keep. And across the table, Margaret saw him do it, and looked down at her plate, and her mouth did the thing again that wasn't quite a smile, and was better than one. It was 3 more weeks before either of them said the plain thing. It was Margaret who said it, because she'd been the one to climb the courthouse steps alone, and she was not, it turned out, a woman who left the hardest saying to somebody else. They were on the porch. Danny was asleep with the dog. The night smelled of turned earth and the last cold coming down off the peaks. "You keep saying you're passing through," she said. "I did say that. You've mended every hinge on the place. You've set half the fence. You loaned my son a watch that a man doesn't loan unless he means to stay near enough to collect it." She kept her eyes on the dark yard, her hands folded, her shoulders squared the way they squared when a thing mattered, and she was afraid. A person passing through doesn't put down that many small roots, Amos read. He'd have to tear them all out to go, and it'd bleed. Amos said nothing. His heart was doing something it hadn't done in 8 years, and he was letting it. "I run this place," she said. "I stood up in front of the whole county, and I run this place. And I mean to go on running it, and I won't be managed, and I won't be saved, and I won't be a thing a man fixes behind my back." She turned and looked at him full on. "But the chair's been empty long enough, and I find I don't want to eat across from it anymore. I'd rather eat across from you." She let out a breath. "That's the whole of my offer. Take it or leave it, but take it plain, because I won't say it twice." For a long moment, there was only the night and the far-off water and the dog's soft breathing. "We do the rest together," Amos said at last, roughly. The ranch, the note, all of it. Together or not at all. I don't want a thing you didn't build. I only ever want to hold the lamp. Then hold it here, she said. Stop holding it on your way to somewhere else. And Amos Reed, who had counted fence posts up every road in the territory, because counting was the only thing that ever stayed with him, who had carried a stopped watch through 8 years of nowhere waiting for a reason to make it tick again, Amos Reed took off his hat and put his ink-stained hand over her folded ones on the porch rail and stopped. The watch stayed in his coat pocket, stopped and silent, and he did not open it that night, and he made no promise about its ticking. But in the morning he sat at the mended table in the plain fourth chair, and Danny put the dead watch on the wood between his own father's and this new man's, 2 stopped watches side by side, and nobody said they had to run again. Some things you keep because keeping is the point of them, not to be saved, only to be near enough to be kept. And the door that had opened one iron-smelling dusk to a stranger who counted fences stayed open, and the ranch went green, and the empty chair sat turned to the corner where the light could still find it, making room, the way the living make room, for the ones still here.